Can you imagine yourself going into a shelter at night and you come out tomorrow morning after a night of bombing and you walk down your street and your house is blown apart? It's hard to describe. People felt their lives had been disrupted completely. Some had lost their homes, some had lost their family, wives were killed, children were killed. It was a very difficult time, and we didn't have counselors or people like they have today. We had to get on with it.
Frightened young soldiers going off to war. Scarred veterans, brothers coming home.
Well, I think most of the people after the war were really optimistic about the way things are going to happen. The feeling after the war was something like I've never ever seen before. People were so relieved that we'd won. It's all gone. No more killing, no more deaths.
No more war? Such relief at last, no more war. But for some, the battle had just begun.
I was diagnosed two and a half years after I was discharged.
When the time came for my discharge, well, I went and had an x-ray, and they said, well, you have to go to Victoria for an assessment. And I said, why? And they said, well, you got a spot on your lung, about the size of my fingernail. And I told him, I says, well, if you don't mind, well, let's just forget about this. I want to go home, which is a good attitude, eh?
The origins of the TB Vets Association harkens back to a different time in tuberculosis, post-war times, when in fact there wasn't really any treatment for tuberculosis.
And I did everything I was told. If the doctors told me to stand on my head, I'd have done that.
I was in a total of 3 years. And when you tell people you're in the hospital for 3 years, they say, oh my God, this is just terrible. But we were all young. The nurses are young. The nurses are beautiful. They treated us well. And it didn't seem like 3 years. Eh?
And then the awkward readjusting, once again, to life as it should be.
When I left Ronquillo, I had to be discharged from a military hospital, which was Shaughnessy up here. So when I came to Vancouver, I transferred my Legion membership to Branch 44, which was a tubercular veterans branch. Well, the idea of TB Vets started at a Royal Canadian Convention, which was back in, I believe it was in Windsor, Ontario, and we had sent a delegation down. These people met the Disabled American Veterans Association, and they had already got this thing in operation, and they were doing quite well with it. And they suggested in general to us that this might be an advantageous thing for us to do.
Such a simple idea. Plant it, and it would grow.
Just thinking about it at the start, we used to look for a 50-cent piece. We sent out envelopes with a slip of them, and they put 50 cents in, and that was their contribution. And at that time, of course, the postage was a lot cheaper, and we were getting a better return from for our mail out.
Colonel Woodward came to their office one day, see what they were doing, realized that some of them were sitting on boxes. The next day, a Woodward truck pulled up with tables and chairs and desks and everything.
I can always remember one girl holding up a $10 bill. She got in, opened an envelope, and that was, quite an exciting time to get $10 in those days. That was a lot of money. So anyways, we sort of progressed along.
And it grew, an idea that was meant to be, and the pennies became dollars. More than they needed, but others have needs.
So they started to give it to hospitals for equipment for respiratory or TB work, and started also to have enough money to help research to eradicate TB once and for all.
TB is the most devastating disease from a single organism. It still kills 2 million people a year, every year. And as astonishing as it sounds, every 20 seconds a person dies from TB throughout the world. So it's very important to study the disease, to understand why it is still able to be the #1 killing bacteria in the world today.
I think there's a popular misconception that tuberculosis has been eliminated. I think many of the public might think that. And indeed, it's not unusual in the medical community either. The fact is that we have within our city an area with the highest rates of tuberculosis in Canada at times.
I work for tuberculosis outreach in the downtown east side. Basically, it's a position funded by the TB vets through my position at the BC Centre for Disease Control. So my job there is doing community screening for tuberculosis along with a nurse, and then doing directly observed therapy of medications for clients in that neighbourhood.